As its name suggests, the Hill Times is a newspaper for Canadian political insiders on Parliament Hill. Some news, lots of gossip, lots of who's who vanity stories. It's extremely expensive too, $399 a year for a subscription to a weekly newspaper with a website. But look, no one in Ottawa uses their own money to pay for anything. They expense it to you, the taxpayer, just like you pay for every boozy lunch they have too. So if Parliament Hill is a private club, the Hill Times is like the club's newsletter. In their articles, they literally put people's names in bold letters because they know so many of their readers are just scanning the newspaper to see if they're in it. And once a year, like any club newsletter, they have a fun, gossipy year-end issue. For the Hill Times, it's a survey of Parliament Hill MPs and staff and politicos to ask who's the hardest working MP, who's the best MP, who's the worst MP. Until very recently, they used to have a vote for the sexiest MP, but I guess they dropped that in the age of Harvey Weinstein. But they take it seriously. They even had a polling company called Forum handle the survey and statistically weight it by party affiliation and whatnot. Over 100 political insiders voted. It won't surprise you to know that Justin Trudeau won the survey as the most valuable MP. I mean, it's a Liberal town, he's their boss, and he's their meal ticket, so yeah, pretty much guaranteed to win, but it's also probably true. I mean, do you think for a moment that the Liberal Party would be in government if their leader had been anyone else? And because these survey takers are anonymous, they can be honest about who they don't like. Like the worst politician in Ottawa, they chose Bill Morneau, the unethical Liberal finance minister who has brought so much scandal with him, hiding his assets in numbered companies, keeping his villa in France a secret, lying about putting his company in a blind trust, things like that. So even though it's a clubby, gossipy survey dominated by Liberals, it's also honest because it's secret, right? And you see what I mean about all the names being in bold letters there? You can just imagine every MP on the Hill looking to see if they were voted as smart or sexy or whatever. I won't lie, it's interesting. I mean, aren't you curious about what Parliament Hill insiders think will be the most important issue in 2018? I am. They say NAFTA. That was their top answer for the survey, which is probably right. Some of it's just plain fun, like where their favorite happy hour place is in Ottawa. That's actually useful for lobbyists to know, and lobbyists read this newspaper very closely. Who is the most approachable cabinet minister? Sorry, the folks who voted for Kent Hare, the one who told thalidomide victims to suck it up and stop with their sob stories. I'm going to dispute that survey result, him coming in the top 3 for that, but maybe Kent Hare just told his staff their jobs depended on this, so they'd better get Kent Hare mania going. But still, it is what it is. You may disagree with these survey results, but they are the survey results of Ottawa insiders. But look at this. Look at this. Which talking head would you most like to silence? And there I am, Rebel Media's Ezra Levant. By far in first place, 13.4%. The second place finisher was Rosemary Barton in the CBC at 7.5%. Here's the text of the article quoting the pollster who runs Forum. As for the talking head voters most wanted silenced, Rebel Media's Ezra Levant topped the list. He's a little out there for a lot of people, Mr. Bozinoff mildly put it. So what do you make of that? Let me tell you what I make of that. First of all, I think it's extremely weird that a newspaper of any sort would want to ask the government who they would want to silence and censor. Why would any journalist ask that? It's creepy for a journalist to do a survey of any group of people about who should be silenced. But to ask people who work for the state, for the government, who actually have the power to silence people, isn't that not just weird, but contrary to the very foundations of the principles of journalism? Oh, and if you care about such things, isn't it also contrary to our laws and our culture, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that guarantees free press and freedom of speech? It's not, which journalist do you think is the worst? They didn't ask, which journalist do you disagree with the most, or which journalist gets it wrong the most? That's all fine. That's what they ask about each other, right? Who's the nicest MP? Who's the worst MP? They don't ask which MP should be silenced or jailed or something like that, because that would be creepy. You don't silence an MP. You debate him, or you ignore him, or you vote him out. You don't silence journalists. You criticize them or you ignore them. Who's the weirdo? Who's so weird at the Hill Times who would ask a question, what journalist do you want to silence? And who are the weirdos on the Hill who would answer that question? If you ask me who the worst journalist in Canada is, I'd give you a list of 30 names. But if you ask me which journalist I'd most like to silence, I'd say no one. I don't want to silence that. I mean, I don't want to have to pay for journalists I don't like, but that's not the same as gagging them. But gagging me, silencing me, that's the language they used. That's what the survey asked, and that's what was answered. I'm sorry, but that is evidence of a sickness in our political culture. Having a fun poll about who should be silenced, everybody. You can't vote about which MP is sexy anymore. That's morally too far for the Hill Times. But, even if it's the stuff of a lot of the gossip on the Hill, but gossiping about which journalists you'd like to silence, isn't that something more suited to a Russian newspaper or an Iranian newspaper? No. That's in Canada's media political capital. I'm irked by it only in that it telegraphs to the government that they could probably act on their obvious desire to censor us. They would have the support of the rest of the media party and the political classes, including the Hill Times. And that is a real issue right now. As you know, the Pakistan-born Muslim MP, Iqra Khalid, who introduced a motion called M103 that would bring Pakistani media values to Canada, not Canadian media values, calls for the, quote, elimination of what she calls Islamophobia. It's not a Canadian way to do things. By the way, Islamophobia is not even defined in the motion. A whole-of-government approach, that's in the motion, to eliminate ideas, which obviously would include censorship. So this isn't an academic debate. This is really happening literally right now. A Canadian parliamentary committee is considering the very subject of silencing journalists. And the Hill Times and its survey answerers and its readers are excited about that. But here's what this also shows. It shows how effective our tiny little operation is. We really are tiny. The CBC gets $1.5 billion a year from the government. Our entire annual budget is a fraction of 1% of that. The CBC burns up our annual budget literally in a few hours. The CBC is also forced into everyone's home in the country through mandatory carriage in your cable package. And yet we, and me, loom so large in the minds of Liberals, the insider Ottawa clique, that they hate us and hate me more than anyone else. Little us. So maybe we're small, but we're not ineffective if we're on their minds. Maybe we're raising issues that the Liberal insiders don't want us to talk about. Whether it's our friend Sheila Gunn-Reid and her skeptical point of view about the theory of man-made global warming. Whether it's our criticism of Trudeau picking a trade war with the United States. Whether it's our criticism of Trudeau's open borders weirdness with illegal immigration. And they hate it when we do things like when we rented this big billboard truck saying fire more no, which is weird because they all said he was the worst MP, didn't they? Oh, they hated that truck. Now, it's almost the end of 2017. The Rebel's almost 3 years old now. Our birthday is just a month and a half away in February. We have made our share of mistakes in the past 3 years, but we've had our share of successes too, maybe more than our share. We've done a lot right, and our videos have been watched hundreds of millions of times. And we have thousands of grassroots supporters who crowdfund our cause for us because we don't get a dime from Trudeau and we wouldn't take one. And to me, that's what this malicious Hill Times poll shows. We are the one last free, independent media company in Canada. We're not owned by the government. We're not reliant on the government or regulated by the government, which is exactly why they want to silence what we say. Who knows what 2018 will bring? Maybe those Parliament Hill insiders will get their wish. Maybe they really will come to silence us. But as long as we can, we will keep doing our journalism. We will keep fighting to tell the other side of the story and keep standing up for millions of Canadians who want a voice and will not be silenced. Thank you for your support this past year, whether it's as a premium subscriber for $8 a month or if it's as a crowdfunding donor. When they say they want to silence me, they really want to silence you too. Let us not be silent. Let's keep fighting for freedom and Canadian values, like a free press. That's an excerpt from my daily TV show, The Ezra Levant Show. Normally it's behind a paywall, but I thought you'd like this video, so we put it on YouTube. If you want to subscribe to watch the daily show every day, including always 2 interviews a day, and I read my hate mail, just click on this screen and become a premium member.